I built my tech consultancy business from nothing but determination and endless 18-hour days. For 3 years, I sacrificed everything to watch it grow from a one-man operation to a respected firm generating 7 figures annually. Then I met Amanda at a conference in Dallas. She was beautiful, ambitious, and seemed to genuinely appreciate the dedication it took to create something meaningful. 2 years later, we were engaged and planning our future together. I never imagined her family had a completely different idea of what our marriage should mean for my business. Before I tell you how my perfect relationship crumbled overnight, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button if you have ever had to choose between your hard work and someone you loved. After graduating college with a computer science degree and $20,000 in student loans, I knew the corporate ladder was not for me. I wanted to build something of my own, something that would reflect my values and work ethic. So at 24, I converted my tiny apartment bedroom into an office and launched what would eventually become Summit Solutions, a specialized tech consulting firm focusing on cybersecurity infrastructure for medium-sized businesses. Those first months were brutal. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee while cold calling potential clients during the day and coding until 3 in the morning. For the entire first year, I barely made enough to cover rent and my loan payments. I remember many nights questioning if I had made a terrible mistake, but something inside would not let me quit. The breakthrough came 18 months in when I landed HealthStream, a regional healthcare provider needing a complete security overhaul. That $60,000 contract allowed me to rent a small office space and hire my first 2 employees. From there, we steadily expanded our client base through word of mouth and referrals. By year 3, Summit Solutions had 15 employees and was generating just over $1 million in annual revenue. Today, 5 years since I started, we employ 32 people, have offices in 3 cities, and our revenue reached $4 million last year. We specialize in creating customized security systems that protect sensitive data while remaining user-friendly, a balance that has become our competitive advantage. This business is more than just a company to me. Every client, every employee, contract, every office lease was built from my sweat and sleepless nights. Summit is like my first child, something I nurtured from a fragile idea into a thriving entity. The pride I feel watching my team grow and succeed is something I never found working for others. I met Amanda during a tech industry conference in Dallas 3 years ago. I was presenting a panel on data security trends when she asked a surprisingly insightful question about regulatory compliance from the audience. Later at the networking reception, she approached me to continue the conversation, and I was immediately drawn to her confidence and intelligence. She worked in marketing for a software company and had this incredible ability to translate technical concepts into compelling narratives. Our first conversation lasted nearly 2 hours, and by the end of it, I had asked for her number. Our first date was the following weekend at a quiet Italian restaurant where we talked until the staff started stacking chairs around us. What impressed me most about Amanda was that she genuinely seemed to understand the entrepreneurial mindset. She did not roll her eyes when I checked my phone for client emergencies or got excited talking about encryption protocols. Unlike previous relationships where my dedication to the business became a constant source of friction, Amanda appeared to respect the commitment required to build something meaningful. We discovered shared passions for hiking documentary films and trying exotic cuisines. Our second date was a Saturday morning trail hike that turned into lunch and then dinner. By the 3rd week, we were talking daily, and I found myself thinking about her constantly despite my packed schedule. There was something different about her compared to women I had dated before. She was ambitious herself, with clear career goals and the drive to achieve them. I felt like we were equals, both working to build our futures just in different industries. When she told me she admired what I had accomplished with Summit, it felt like genuine appreciation rather than just politeness. Looking back, I should have paid more attention when she occasionally mentioned how financially secure we would be if my business continued to grow. At the time, I interpreted these comments as her being practically minded about our future, not as subtle probes into my financial status. After 8 months of dating, Amanda and I decided to move in together. We found a modern 2-bedroom apartment downtown, close to both our offices. Sharing a home felt natural, like the obvious next step for us. She brought warmth to my previously functional space, adding thoughtful touches that made it feel like a real home rather than just a place to sleep between work sessions. Living together revealed new dimensions of compatibility. We established routines that accommodated both our work schedules, taking turns, cooking dinner, and respecting each other's need for occasional alone time. Amanda seemed to truly understand when I needed to work late or take weekend calls. She would simply curl up with a book or call a friend, never making me feel guilty about tending to business needs. Our social lives merged seamlessly, too. My business partners and their spouses welcomed her, enthusiastically impressed by her intelligence and charm. Similarly, I got along well with her circle of friends, mostly ambitious professionals in marketing and finance. For the first time, I felt like I had found someone who fit perfectly into every aspect of my life. There were subtle signs, so subtle I dismissed them entirely. Occasional comments about how much easier life would be when the business could run without my constant attention. Questions about our long-term revenue projections that seemed just a touch too specific. Her increasing interest in the legal structure of Summit and ownership percentages. At the time, I interpreted these as signs she was invested in our future together, not red flags about her true intentions. We began discussing marriage about 18 months into our relationship. We both wanted children eventually and shared similar values about family life. I envisioned Amanda potentially reducing her work hours when we had kids, while I would delegate more responsibilities at Summit to be a present father. We talked about buying a house in the suburbs with good schools nearby, and office space for me to work from home occasionally. The proposal happened during a weekend trip to Napa Valley to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. I had arranged a private sunset vineyard tour ending at a hilltop overlooking the valley where a small table had been set with champagne and her favorite desserts. When I dropped to one knee and presented the 2-carat diamond ring, her eyes filled with tears as she said yes without hesitation. That night, as we celebrated, I truly believed I had found my perfect partner, someone who would stand beside me through all of life's challenges. The first time I met Amanda's parents was during a weekend visit to their home in Scottsdale 4 months into our relationship. Their house was impressively large, situated in an exclusive gated community with manicured lawns and a view of the golf course. From the moment I stepped through their front door, I sensed I was being evaluated rather than welcomed. Thomas and Barbara Jackson had built a successful chain of luxury furniture stores across the Southwest. They were polite but reserved with perfect country club manners that somehow made me feel underdressed, despite wearing my best casual clothes. Dinner conversation revolved around their recent European vacation and various friends with important-sounding positions at major corporations. After dessert, Thomas invited me to his study for a scotch. What followed felt more like a job interview than a getting-to-know-you chat. He questioned me extensively about Summit Solutions, wanting to know annual growth percentages, profit margins, and my 5-year expansion strategy. I answered honestly, proud of what I had built, interpreting his interest as respect for another entrepreneur. When he asked about my exit strategy and whether I would consider selling in the future, I should have recognized the calculated look in his eyes. Barbara was subtler in her approach. Throughout the weekend, she made comments about Amanda always being part of the Jackson legacy and how they expected their future son-in-law to become part of the family business circle. When I mentioned keeping our professional lives separate, she smiled tightly and changed the subject. What struck me most was how differently Amanda behaved around her parents. The confident, independent woman I knew became almost childlike, seeking their approval and deferring to their opinions. She laughed too loudly at her father's mediocre jokes and agreed enthusiastically with her mother's judgmental comments about mutual acquaintances. It was as if she became a different person within the family dynamic. On the drive home, I mentioned this observation carefully. Amanda explained that her parents had high expectations and she had always worked hard to meet them. They had paid for her expensive private education and helped her secure her first job through connections. In her view, their occasional controlling behavior came from a place of love and wanting the best for her. I accepted her explanation, believing that as our relationship solidified, she would gradually establish more independence from them. In the months following our engagement, I noticed subtle but concerning changes in Amanda's behavior and attitude. She began asking increasingly detailed questions about Summit's finances, wanting to review quarterly projections and client contracts. When I would share exciting news about a new client or successful project, her first questions always centered around billable value rather than the technical achievements or team contributions. She started making suggestions about involving her father in business decisions, particularly regarding our expansion plans. One evening, as I discussed potentially opening a fourth office in Phoenix, she immediately said Thomas knows the commercial real estate market there intimately. He could help you negotiate a much better lease than you would get on your own. When I explained that our company CFO handled these matters and had always secured favorable terms, she seemed personally offended. Increasingly, Amanda began comparing my business practices unfavorably to her father's. Your profit margins could be higher if you restructured your service tiers like Dad did with his premium furniture lines. Your employee benefits package is unnecessarily generous. Dad says that eats into shareholder value. Each critique was delivered as helpful advice, but the subtext was clear: my business decisions were inferior to her father's approach. Our previously balanced relationship dynamics began to shift as well. The woman who had respected my occasional need to work late now complained about my hours. The understanding partner who appreciated my entrepreneurial drive now suggested I was prioritizing Summit over our relationship. The engagement seemed to trigger a sense of entitlement to opinions about how I ran the company that paid for our comfortable lifestyle. As wedding planning began in earnest, Amanda pushed for an accelerated timeline, wanting to get married within 6 months rather than the year-long engagement we had initially discussed. When I asked about the rush, she vaguely mentioned optimal timing for starting a family and her parents' busy travel schedule. Looking back, I realized she wanted to secure her position legally before I could discover her true intentions. The first significant tension in our relationship emerged around wedding planning, specifically regarding the scale and budget of the celebration. Amanda envisioned an extravagant affair at an exclusive resort with 250 guests, custom everything, and a price tag approaching $100,000. When I suggested something more intimate and meaningful, she became uncharacteristically upset. My perfect business partner and fiancé appears to be deeply preoccupied with keeping up appearances and wants our wedding to reflect a certain social status. I remember thinking as she showed me photos of elaborate floral installations, custom monogrammed everything. While Summit was doing well, I was still reinvesting significantly in growth, and such an extravagant expense seemed unnecessary. When I expressed concerns about the budget, Amanda casually mentioned that her parents had offered to contribute significantly to the wedding costs. I was initially relieved until she outlined the strings attached. They wanted control over the guest list, adding 50 of their business associates I had never met. They insisted on selecting the venue, a golf resort owned by her father's friend. Most concerning, they expected to be prominently acknowledged as hosts in all aspects of the event, essentially turning our wedding into a networking opportunity for Jackson Luxury Furnishings. Our first major argument erupted when I suggested scaling back their involvement and the overall wedding scope. Amanda accused me of being ungrateful and inflexible. Marriage means sharing everything, Colton. My family is important to me and they want to celebrate us properly. Her definition of sharing everything took on new meaning in retrospect. Despite my reservations, I ultimately agreed to the larger wedding, believing it was important to make Amanda happy and start our marriage without conflict. I rationalized that one day of excessive spending and corporate schmoozing was a small price for marital harmony. Little did I know this was just the opening move in a carefully orchestrated plan. 6 weeks before our wedding date, Amanda suggested we have dinner with her parents to finalize some wedding details. She recommended La Maison, an exclusive French restaurant downtown where entrees started at $60. Normally, we would have discussed such an expensive dinner, but she had already made the reservation, explaining that her father would be covering the bill. I arrived directly from work, finding the three of them already seated at a corner table, cocktails in hand and looking suspiciously comfortable. Thomas stood to shake my hand firmly while Barbara offered her cheek for the obligatory kiss. Amanda seemed tense beneath her bright smile, fidgeting with her napkin in a way I had come to recognize as nervousness. The first half hour progressed pleasantly enough with discussions about wedding logistics, honeymoon options, and harmless anecdotes from Amanda's childhood. The waiter had just cleared our appetizer plates when Thomas smoothly changed the subject. "Colton, we are thrilled to officially welcome you to the Jackson family. Barbara and I have been discussing how to properly mark this important union between our daughter and you. We believe in establishing strong family business connections, as I am sure you have gathered from our previous conversations." Something in his tone immediately put me on edge. Before I could respond, he reached into his jacket and produced a leather portfolio, placing it on the table between us. As Amanda and her mother exchanged knowing glances, Thomas opened it to reveal what I now recognize as transfer of ownership documents for Summit Solutions. "We would like to propose a wedding gift exchange of sorts," he continued smoothly. "In recognition of your marriage to our daughter, we feel it appropriate for the Jackson family to acquire a 30% ownership stake in Summit Solutions. This would create the kind of family business alignment that has served our networks very well over generations." I sat in stunned silence as he outlined his proposal. In exchange for the ownership shares, he would provide strategic advice and business connections to help Summit reach new markets. The terms were non-negotiable: 30% ownership transferred before the wedding, with stipulations for additional transfers should Amanda and I have children. As my shock turned to anger, Amanda jumped in with clearly rehearsed supporting arguments. "Honey, Dad has grown businesses much larger than Summit. His expertise would be invaluable to your expansion plans. Plus, this creates financial security for our future family. It is really a win-win situation." The coordinated nature of their presentation made it obvious this had been planned for some time, possibly since the beginning of our relationship. The realization that Amanda had been gathering information about Summit for months to prepare for this moment hit me like a physical blow. The woman I thought was supporting my dreams had actually been conducting due diligence for her family's acquisition. I firmly placed my napkin on the table and looked directly at Thomas. "I appreciate your interest in my company, but Summit Solutions is not for sale, partially or otherwise. I built this business from nothing, and while I plan to share my life with Amanda, that does not include handing over ownership of my company to her parents." Thomas's expression hardened as he launched into a condescending lecture about family dynamics and business sense. He implied that my resistance demonstrated immaturity and a lack of serious commitment to Amanda. He even suggested that many young entrepreneurs fail because they lack proper guidance from experienced business people like himself. Amanda's reaction was the most revealing. Rather than supporting me or even attempting to mediate, she fully aligned with her parents. "Colton, we have discussed this extensively. It makes perfect sense for our families to be connected financially, as well as through marriage. I have already told Mom and Dad you would see the benefits." The argument escalated quickly. Barbara made cutting remarks about my humble beginnings and suggested I should be grateful for their interest in my little company. Thomas implied that without their connections, Summit would likely plateau or fail within a few years. Amanda, tears welling in her eyes, delivered the ultimatum I never saw coming. "This is important to me and my family, Colton. If you cannot see the value in bringing our businesses together, perhaps we need to reconsider whether we are truly compatible for marriage. Either accept this reasonable proposal, or the wedding is off." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I stood up, placed my credit card on the table for my portion of the meal, and simply said, "I will not be blackmailed into giving up what I have built. We will definitely be discussing this further, Amanda. Thank you for dinner." I walked out of the restaurant with my mind racing but my resolve firm. The family I had almost married into had shown their true colors, and the woman I loved had revealed herself as a willing participant in their scheme. The drive home was thick with tension as Amanda alternated between angry silence and tearful accusations. I concentrated on navigating traffic while processing the bombshell that had just detonated in my life. When we finally reached our apartment, the real confrontation began. "Why are you being so unreasonable?" she demanded as soon as the door closed behind us. "This is a beneficial arrangement for everyone. My parents are not trying to take your company, just participate in its growth and success." "Beneficial for whom exactly?" I countered. "1. For your father to gain control of a profitable business he did not build. For you to have leverage over my financial future. I thought we were partners, Amanda." Real partners support each other's dreams instead of trying to carve them up for family profit. She paced our living room, becoming increasingly agitated. I already promised Dad you would agree to this. He has been talking to his business associates about the expansion possibilities for Summit. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? Her words landed like a slap. You promised my business to your father without even discussing it with me first. When exactly did you plan to mention this little detail? Before or after we signed the marriage certificate? What followed was a revelation that shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. Amanda had been planning this with her parents for nearly a year. The accelerated wedding timeline, her increased interest in Summit's operations, even her suggestions about business strategy, had all been coordinated with her father to prepare for this ownership transfer. My suspicions fully aroused, I walked to our home office and discovered she had been making copies of confidential business documents for months. Financial statements, client contracts, employee records, all duplicated and presumably shared with her father to assess Summit's value and vulnerabilities. As I confronted her with the evidence, Amanda's tactics changed from justification to threats. If you do not agree to this arrangement, I am calling off the wedding. My parents have already told their friends about joining forces with your company. Either sign the ownership transfer or I am leaving. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The woman threatening me now bore no resemblance to the person I thought I had fallen in love with. I looked at her standing there using our relationship as leverage for a business acquisition and felt a strange sense of clarity and relief. That will not be necessary, Amanda. I am ending our engagement effective immediately. You and your family have demonstrated that this relationship was built on false pretenses, and I have no interest in marrying someone who sees me as a business opportunity rather than a partner. Her expression of shock was almost comical. She had been so confident in her power over me, so certain I would capitulate rather than lose her, that my decision to end things first completely blindsided her. In an instant, her demeanor changed from threatening to panicked backpedaling. Colton, you cannot be serious. I love you. This was just a business discussion that got out of hand. We can forget the whole thing and go back to planning our wedding. She reached for my hand, but I stepped away, my decision already made. That night I slept in our guest room, and the next morning began the process of disentangling our lives. The expensive engagement ring was returned, our wedding vendors notified of the cancellation, and arrangements made for her to move back to her own apartment while I remained in ours. Each logistical step reinforced that I had made the right decision, painful though it was. The next weeks were challenging in ways I had not anticipated. Amanda alternated between tearful pleas for reconciliation and vicious attacks on my character. Her father left threatening voicemails about potential legal action based on promised business opportunities. I even received a lengthy email from Barbara, explaining how I had severely damaged Amanda's social standing by canceling the high-profile wedding. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact, communicating only through a lawyer I retained to protect Summit from any potential claims. He advised documenting all interactions and securing all company information steps that felt extreme but necessary given the circumstances. Learning that Amanda had downloaded company files to her personal devices confirmed my fears were justified. Alone in what had been our shared apartment, I found myself questioning my decision during quiet evenings. Had I overreacted? Was I throwing away a loving relationship over a simple business disagreement? The doubt would creep in during unguarded moments, only to be dispelled when friends showed me the disparaging social media posts. Amanda was making or forwarded the emails she sent, trying to contact my major clients. That first month after ending the engagement was the loneliest period of my life. The person I had planned to share everything with was suddenly revealed as someone I never truly knew. The future I had envisioned disappeared overnight, replaced by uncertainty and betrayal. I threw myself into work, spending long hours at the office to avoid the emptiness of home. My friends proved to be my salvation during this dark time. Jason and Michael, my oldest friends from college, took turns checking on me sometimes, just sitting in silence, watching basketball when conversation felt too difficult. Diane, my company's operations manager, reorganized my schedule to protect me from unnecessary stress and quietly strengthened our client relationships that Amanda had attempted to damage. Gradually, I began rebuilding my personal life. I sold the apartment we had shared and bought a smaller place closer to my main office. I established new routines focused on physical and mental health, joining a boxing gym where I could physically work through my anger and starting therapy to process the betrayal. Each step forward reinforced that ending the relationship had been an act of self-preservation rather than a mistake. My business became both my refuge and my vindication. The very entity Amanda's family had attempted to appropriate became the proof of my resilience. I implemented new security protocols, revised partnership agreements, and created stronger boundaries between my personal and professional lives. Summit not only survived the turmoil but thrived, securing 2 major government contracts that had been in negotiation for months. 6 months after the breakup, I cautiously began dating again. Nothing serious, just occasional dinner with interesting women who had no connection to my business world. I approached these interactions with new wisdom and healthy skepticism, watching for signs I had previously missed or ignored. The experience with Amanda had made me more discerning, but had not hardened my heart completely. Looking back a year later, I feel only gratitude that I discovered Amanda's true nature before we were legally bound. Imagine the damage she could have done as my wife, with legitimate access to company information and legal claims to business assets. The pain of betrayal, while intense, was far less costly than a divorce would have been both emotionally and financially. I have gained wisdom about relationship red flags that I previously dismissed. When someone shows an inordinate interest in the financial details of your work rather than the passion behind it, pay attention. When their family dynamic involves unusual levels of control and deference, consider the implications. When your partner begins to use your relationship as leverage to obtain concessions, recognize the manipulation for what it is. Through mutual connections, I later learned that Amanda had attempted similar manipulations in previous relationships, though never at this scale. Her pattern involved targeting successful men, integrating herself into their professional lives, then leveraging emotional connection for financial gain. My situation was apparently just an escalation of this strategy with her parents as active participants. Today, Summit Solutions employs 47 people across 4 offices and serves clients throughout North America. I remain its sole owner, though I have established profit-sharing programs that reward the team members who contribute to our success. My personal life has found a new balance with healthy relationships built on genuine connection rather than hidden agendas. The most valuable lesson from this experience was learning to trust my instincts even when emotionally invested. The warning signs were present from the beginning, but I chose to interpret them charitably rather than critically. Now I understand that protecting what you have built is not selfishness, but rather a responsibility to yourself and those who depend on you. Have you ever had someone try to take credit for or ownership of something you built through your own hard work? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this account helped you recognize similar patterns in your own relationships, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes walking away is the strongest move you can make. I hope sharing my experience helps someone else protect what they have worked so hard to build.